Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Well, it seems like porn is the topic of our times, at least on this show. And I know for you men who are dedicated listeners, subscribers to my email list, follow me on social media, you know that I got myself into some hot water a few weeks ago when I had sent a notification out to my email list about the porn episode that Brian and I released called 4 Feel-Good Porn Options and Alternatives, which inadvertently went to 300 of my corporate clients, creating one hell of a firestorm, losing probably 60 to 70% of my revenue like that. And in quite a beautiful turn of events has actually caused me to go inward in a very deep way around why had I structured my business and life that way, where being me, what I believe to be doing a service to mankind and to the men of this world, could so quickly turn my paychecks into vanish into thin air. Why had I built my life that way? And so the beautiful bookend to that story is over this last week and a half, I've actually decided definitively to be removing myself from doing work in the corporate space and throwing 110% of my energy and effort behind helping men live their fullest potential by discovering and living the great man inside of them, and talking openly and honestly and transparently to you about all things related to sex, sexuality. And I know if you've been listening to the show, I've been pretty transparent, but there's actually quite a few places I haven't gone yet, whether it's on the show or in other forums, because I've had to keep some sort of wall up to prevent from happening what just happened. But apparently I am no longer willing to create those two worlds anymore. I'm tired of bifurcating. And now the governor's off. And you can expect a hell of a lot more exciting stuff coming from me in the future, the real stuff. So today, I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 questions I get from women all the time about men and their porn use. I seem to be a pretty safe guy that women can come to, because porn is something that divides in many relationships. It's oftentimes undiscussed. It's oftentimes the secret inside of many relationships. I'm not a relationship coach. I'm not a therapist, but I am someone who has walked the walk when it comes to inspecting my own porn habits. I took 4 years off of porn during my time in Sex Addicts Anonymous. I reinstated some use of porn. It's minimal in my life, but I do watch porn from time to time in a healthy, transparent way. And what I thought I would do is read to you an email that I got from one of our listeners, or at least someone who subscribed to my email list, a woman, which had the title in the subject line, "How does a woman approach a man about his porn use?" And it's going to take a few minutes to read, and I'm going to read through the whole thing because I think it's really well articulated. I have her permission. We'll call her Sammy. Sammy, I have her permission to read this to you. And I'm going to... in here are 3 of the questions that I get from pretty much every woman about men and their porn use. She doesn't state them explicitly, but she infers to them. And then there's some specific questions she asks in here that I want to address. So I think this would be really helpful for all men, whether or not you have what you may consider to be an unhealthy relationship with porn. If there's anything secretive about your porn use, whether you're single or in a relationship, then secretive leads to some form of shame. All right, and we'll talk more about that as I read through her letter here. And if there's any shame, then there's something to look at to resolve and potentially provide more freedom in your life. And when there's more freedom, you have greater power. So here's her message. First line: are all men addicted to porn? It seems that way, or at least all the men that I've encountered. I'm very sexual and enjoy sex and intimacy a lot, so I don't get it. My long-term partner and I are in our early 50s, in good shape, very active, and have a loving relationship. Sounds perfect, huh? It would be on the outside. I've been blaming his lackluster desire on low T, too busy, exhaustion, etc., and I've begun to feel like a chore at times. Actually, most of the time. Then, a few months ago, I came down the stairs nearing bedtime and he was watching porn on his phone and touching himself. I had suspected it a few other times, and this time it was absolutely not my imagination. I'm guessing he was pre-gaming. He's rarely spontaneous and it seems to be that Sunday and Wednesday are his sex days. I'm not sure if I did the right thing now by creeping back up the stairs backward and going unnoticed, but I was afraid if I flew off the handle, he would shut down completely. It has really been bothering me though. Now I wonder if he's been doing that the entire time we've been together. I want to have a conversation about it, but I can't seem to find the words, and I don't want him to feel attacked. He's honestly the best man I know on all other fronts. But this one thing makes me feel like crap about myself, and I know there has to be so many inner conflicts for him. My thoughts are that he thinks in some way he's helping me out by switching gears quickly to be able to have sex, and therefore doing a good thing? Or maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. We both have full-time jobs and part-time creative endeavors that also have deadlines, so we are super busy and tired, but I crave closeness in sex to power through all of that. But he seems to be the opposite and prefers porn and masturbation, or just porn. But I also think he has fetishized enormous breasted women, aka clown-like augmentation, while I'm just average. And now he can't get turned on without that. I'm not sure what's happening, but it's not healthy, at least not for me. He had a 25-year marriage that he says was sexless practically from the beginning, and that's why he finally left once kids were high school age. It's very likely he developed unhealthy porn habits during that time and the time he was dating and single before meeting me. He has reduced his porn habits dramatically since I've known him, which is 5 years. He doesn't know that I know, but he was using chat rooms and had some very unhealthy habits that I discovered but kept to myself. I would then have a generalized conversation about a friend being upset that the husband was using chat rooms and wanted a divorce or random things of that nature. He would always act disgusted about it. And anytime porn or masturbation is brought up on TV or in conversation, he acts completely disgusted. His background is very religious, Catholic upbringing, parent pleaser, and comes across as the nicest, most perfect person you've ever met. Incredible integrity in business and other areas, but he has this deep, dark secret. He's a lector at church, very active still in the church. He has a lot of shame around sex, and it took him a long time to be fairly relaxed and silly and have fun with sex. But this discovery is messing with my mind, and I worry that if I turn it off, we are done. Putting this in writing seems so silly, but I need to discuss it with him before it drives me insane. I just know that men are very sensitive to issues of their sexual behaviors and perceptions of them, and I am struggling with what approach to take where he won't feel ashamed or attacked. Or is it none of my business, and should I just shut up and suffer? If you have any suggestions or resources, I would love to know. Thanks, Sammy. So Sammy, first of all, I want to thank you for articulating what your experience has been so beautifully with so much color and texture. I want to thank you for having compassion that you have for this man. We're going to call him Rick because that's what we do on the show. When there's an unnamed man, we name him Rick. It's kind of our thing. And the fact that you even said a number of times, like, this is hurting me, but I also know it must be painful for him. And, you know, even when he's looking at the clown type augmentation, breasted women, when you're feeling like I'm just average, how could he want that and still want me at the same time? You still have had the compassion to say, yes, he's a man of integrity in all these other areas of his life. And maybe he developed this in a loveless, sexless marriage over a 25-year period. I just wanted to first acknowledge you for your ability to still hold a loving space for him. That's very apparent. And amidst the hurt, that's not an easy thing to do. So I just wanted to acknowledge and applaud that. So let me first start with the 3 questions that pretty much every woman asks me when it comes to porn. And you asked some of these specifically, and some of these you inferred. And the 3 questions are all men addicted to porn? Why does he need porn when he has me? And is there something wrong with me if he's watching porn? Right? Are all men addicted to porn? Why does he need porn when he has me? And is there something wrong with me if he's watching porn? Let me hit the first one. Are all men addicted to porn? The answer is absolutely not. I've been around, like I said, hundreds of men with what would be classified as sexual addictions, or at least identify as sexual addicts. There's some debate about whether sex addiction is actually a thing. Regardless of that, men who identify as sexual addicts who've had many issues with porn. I've been around plenty of guys who are civilians, normal citizens who've never been in a 12-step room, never will be in a 12-step room, who have also shared with me that, yeah, it's like I don't watch porn all the time, but sometimes when I do, I don't feel so great about it. Sometimes I feel the pull even when I don't want it. And then I feel like I can't have sex that night with my partner, or the sex is lackluster because of it. So I would say there's a healthy portion of the men, at least that I run in circles with. And I have I have access to a pretty good cross-section of men through this work that have some sort of ambivalent relationship with porn. And it's not it's not a surprise. The way that we shamify sex, shamify porn, like I just shared at the beginning of this podcast, I got canceled from clients for talking about healthy porn use, using porn that actually is like where women choose, like feminist porn. I get canceled. And it just goes to show how much guilt, shame, anger, fear, comes with this territory. And so what a lot of men do is they go underground and they develop these relationships with porn in secrecy. There's very few men who have any guides in their lives, men that they can talk to thoughtfully about this. And so it becomes kind of this like secret thing that builds up over the course of time. And I want to talk about Rick's secret life in a few moments here, but what ends up happening is I think many men develop some sort of pathology, some small pathological relationship with porn. It could be big like mine was, like it sounds like Rick's is, and it could be smaller, just like maybe I'm using more than I would like, or maybe it's getting in the way of me feeling as alive and engaged with my partner. But no, absolutely not. The answer is like not all men are addicted to porn. I know plenty of men who don't watch porn at all. I know plenty of men in my men's group where we talk about this stuff, who have a healthy relationship with porn. I went through a tormented relationship with porn, took time off, reinstituted it, and now I get to choose what kind of porn I watch that feels good for me, that I communicate to my partners. And if I were in a committed relationship, I would talk openly about it. That took a lot of work. So there are plenty of men who do not have that. I want to set that record straight. Second of all, why does he need porn when he has me? You mentioned that I crave closeness and connection, but he prefers porn and masturbation. So there's a number of answers to the question about why does he need porn when he has me. Much of the relationship that men develop with porn are in our private moments that have nothing to do with our partners. Oftentimes what we turn to porn for is it's quick, it's easy, it's over in a moment, it delivers. It also gives me access to these realms of fantasy that I may be judged and shamed for, right? Inside of a relationship, like plenty of men like transvestite porn, plenty of men like threesomes, plenty of men like to be the, where like you're the inferior, I forget the name of the inferior, cuckolding, where like you're the cuckold. And sometimes they may feel like a man may feel judged or shamed, or has been judged or shamed when bringing that to the table. So there are plenty of reasons why guys go to porn, because it's like in the moment, I can get my needs met. It's easy. It gets the job done. That in the short term, like one-off scenario is great. Like that feels awesome. But what ends up happening is because the feelings are so seductive and so powerful that over time, if a man is drifting with his porn behavior, then it can turn into something where it becomes less of a nice thing to have and it becomes more of a requirement, a necessity. And one of the things that porn is so effective of doing is just kind of, pardon my language here, it face fucks you with its agenda, right? Like porn face fucks men with its agenda, whatever's on the screen. I mean, like you start the video and bang, it's like an 8-inch dick is in a woman's like ass, or there's cum shots. I mean, it's just like Like you're off to the races as soon as you're watching it. And it leaves no room for imagination in a man's world. It's just like, it's just flooding fire hosing a man's system. And that can deaden our sensitivity over a period of time. Like I've spoken openly about this. Like when I was at the height of my porn use, I couldn't have sex with a woman and get off without bringing in some fantasy scenario that I'd seen earlier. Or like you were saying, Rick uses chat rooms. Like that's another way of kind of pornifying, fantasizing in some respects, like needing to bring in some fantasy scenario to get myself hard, to stay hard, to get off, flipping someone into these like pornified positions, need to be like athletic fucking for me to feel something. And I know a lot of guys feel this way. And what ends up happening over time is like those subtleties of closeness, connection, of warming up, of not getting hard right away, which is something I know I've feared, right? Like when I was younger, like you touch me, bang, my dick got hard. And then as I get older, maybe sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get going. And I know like I've worried about that at times. Like, oh, what if she touches me and I'm not fully hard? Is she going to think I'm not a man? Or is she going to think this about her? There's so many of these fears then that come into play that then say, well, it's probably just easier to go back to porn. So it doesn't have we have to go back and rewind the tape to like, what are the series of events in a man's life that has created his present day relationship with porn? Fellas, I want you to really ask yourself that question. Go back in time and look at all of the events that have led up till now that have contributed to your relationship with porn, right? Like, when did you turn to it? When did it become a secret? When did the new fetish develop, right? Like, when did conversations or tension inside of your relationships cause you to shift your behavior? When did you go underground with it? If these are relevant to you, like start to think about these things. And then Sammy, your last question is there something wrong with me if he's watching porn? Again, absolutely not, right? Your question about like, he gets off to circus tits and I'm average. Like how, maybe my average tits are not, like breasts are not enough, right? And that couldn't be further from the truth. Again, like when men are being face fucked with this porn where every body looks a certain way, right? Like everything is airbrushed, everything is plumped up, everything is, augmented. Then over time, if a guy's not careful and he's not intentional with it, then yeah, like he can come to start to expect it as the norm. Simultaneously, he could start to have insecurities about his own dick because all he sees is monster cocks in porn that never go soft, that usually shoot sperm like 300 feet, so like I'm sure he's got his own stuff, thinking of, as he's watching this as well. But I know when I was saying earlier that when I took 4 years off of porn and I took a step back from sex for a little while, when I came back with my sexual partner, a lot of the feelings that had just deadened inside of me because of all that extreme porn. It wasn't even like I was watching extreme porn. Like it was just like the extremeness of porn. I couldn't even feel her skin. Like I couldn't smell her skin. I couldn't appreciate the way her hair fell down her shoulders. Like those little things that when I removed porn for a period of time, all those little nuances of the beauty of a woman started racing back. And I started to appreciate the soft touches and the smells and the moans and the movements and being present with her versus disappearing into some fantasy. But guys don't even know this is happening to them. And I'd be willing to bet that on some level, Rick is unaware, probably has certain awareness, but is unaware of how deeply this has permeated his being. So let's now kind of go more specific into, into the world that Rick has created for himself. In the Great Man Mastermind, we had a conversation about recently how we all have like these three parts of our lives. We have the public self, the private self, and then the secret self. The public self is who we present to the world. This is what we believe will allow us to be loved and accepted by the masses, keep us employed, make us seem like good guys in the community, right? Like, Rick here he's very skilled and adept at creating a public persona that I'm sure does well for him in many respects. He sounds like he's a respected guy at business. He's certainly respected in your eyes in many arenas. Integrity in plenty of spaces. He's a leader in the community church. The private self is the area of our lives where it's like, listen, there are certain parts of me that I only trust certain people in my life to see, and I choose to share that with. There's boundaries between what the rest of the world gets to see and this part of me. This private self is very intentional, right? There's a sacredness to the stuff that you choose to not show the rest of the world. And there's also an honoring of the people that you do choose to show it with, right? That's what we call the private self. And the key characteristics there are like intentionality of what you keep private, honoring your own boundaries, and honoring the people that you choose to share it with. This third part of ourselves is the secret self. And the secret self is where we bury everything that we don't think is acceptable by society, that we think would be unlovable, that we think will be rejected, that we think will lose our partners, our jobs, or something, some sort of praise, some sort of standing. We bury that there. And the key characteristic of the secret self is shame. If a light was shown on what is in that secret self, there would be tremendous shame for that coming to light, because we feel like there's that part of us that's unlovable, or that part of us that would get rejected, or that maybe we're bad, right? I had a secret self with my sex addiction, right? I had a secret self of sexting women and the kinds of ways I would talk to them and the kinds of women that I would go for. That like, if anyone were to see me in public with them, they'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like, where's that coming from? Like this, head scratcher type of stuff. That I would, go to elaborate lengths to fly somewhere just to have sex with somebody, right? Those kinds of things that I kept secret, because I was like, if anyone knows this about me, then I'd be unloved. I'd be undateable. People would lose respect for me. They think I'm a weirdo. And what I hear from Rick is that he and I are very similar in that regard, especially with the fact that Rick grew up in a very Catholic upbringing. Same here, where sex was made to be bad, wrong, evil, immoral, sinful, going to hell. That was how I learned it. Not every Catholic learns that. I learned it that way. And when I listened to, or when I read the detail of, he was in a 25-year marriage that clearly wasn't a loving marriage, at least for a good portion of it, that most likely he did develop this secret life so that he could get his certain needs met. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm saying that many of us have secret lives that we go to release the pressure of our lives, to go where no one else can understand us, but just us. It's a lonely fucking place to be. And I don't want to speak for Rick, but man, I've seen this far too many times, with men in the Sex Addicts Anonymous rooms and in my own life. I'd be willing to bet my life that Rick absolutely fucking hates that he has this relationship with porn, that this relationship with porn has such a grip over him. I bet he fucking hates it. I bet he hates that he needs to use porn and masturbation before he comes upstairs to be with you, if that's what he's doing. I bet he hates that this is a secret. I bet he hates himself on some level for having a dual life. The fact that he acts so disgusted when you've brought up the scenarios that he's doing in his secret world is either he's really good actor or it's authentic. Like he actually despises that part of him. And a big part of that's real. And it's causing him to go further underground. Now that's a lot of speculation, Sammy. But I've seen a lot of this stuff, and I feel pretty confident that a big part of what I just shared is true. That brings us to your original question, Sammy, in the subject line, which is, how does a woman approach a man about his porn use? And this one's going to be tough, because if Rick has gone to such extraordinary lengths to keep this a secret, not just from you, but from everyone in his life, where he has put forth such a carefully curated public persona that's integrous, that's reputable, that's the greatest guy that anyone's known on paper. I was all of those things. I was meticulous with how I portrayed myself to the general public. Then chances are he's got some real defenses up, like a high-grade security system around talking about the reality of his secret life, right? I mean, you've even thrown some chum in the water to try and start the conversations with him about, hey, like a friend of mine discovered his husband in chat rooms and porn, all this stuff, and he's categorically denied it and even expressed disgust around it. If he's gone to that great of lengths to avoid this and hide it from you, hide it from his previous relationships, then I might suspect that there's going to be a lot of denial, potentially even some fighting, potentially some emotions, smoke screens to block any of this from happening. And again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained as a counselor in these arenas. I'm only going on my years of experience in watching other relationships go through this. So what I might recommend, and I tend to stay away from advice on questions that I just get through my inbox because there's so much nuance. But what I might recommend, Sammy, is you getting the support you need first to make sure that you're cared for before initiating a conversation with him about this. Because Sammy, this is where you got it really right. You said, if I come to him with shame or rejecting him on some level, I have the intuition that it's going to lead to a blowback or a shutdown. And I think you're right about that. I think you nailed that. And because there's so much emotion wrapped up in this for you, rightfully so, right? There's a lot of hurt about the secret life. There's hurt about, well, he's jerking off to this stuff. What about me? And there's hurt that you've made so much effort and it feels like it's been rejected. All of that is valid and needs to be communicated at some point, right? No question. It's what happens on that initial conversation. And speaking as a man who's been in Rick's shoes, the thing that I might have wanted is to have known that I was loved more than anything, even amidst the discovery. Knowing that I'm not broken, knowing that I'm not a horrible person, knowing that I'm not a fraud, even if I might not have been able to believe any of that. Because ultimately, that's a big part of what my healing process was involved with. My relationship was the one that discovered my infidelity, and she was lit the fuck up, as you might imagine. So I didn't get that from her right away, but it was the people in other areas of my life who I started to open up to, my best friends, who still loved me and accepted me, my parents, who I told I was going through Sex Addicts Anonymous, who didn't understand exactly what was going on, but loved me unconditionally. And it was only then when I started to recognize that, like, I am lovable. Even these fucked up parts of me, these squirrely parts of me, these devious parts of me, these gross, disgusting parts of me that I'd labeled those things, I could still be loved. And it was only then when I was really able to take a hard look at this stuff, because sex for me had become such a survival mechanism. This secret world was such a survival place that if I felt I was threatened, I would have done anything to preserve the secret. Anything. And I'm not saying that Rick is that way, but man, there's, so many similarities between the two of us. So what that means, Sammy, is potentially going and getting a coach of your own, seeing a therapist of your own, talking through this, revealing your hurt, allowing your heart to be broken, feeling the pain, crying it out, raging it out, like truly being able to express all these emotions that you've been sitting on with the greatest of compassion, and then working through a plan with some support on how to initiate the conversation with Rick. And here's the thing that I've said so many times in so many different forums to women. Listen, the responsibility of a man taking a hard look at his inner world and doing the work and making the change, that responsibility is not on your shoulders. It's on his. He's got to be the one to do it. And there's no questioning that you have a remarkable ability to influence him because you are the woman that he loves, that you're in a relationship with, who clearly has a big heart and compassion and patience and an ability to see beyond your own hurt. So, I hope that there was something in here that was useful for you and something here that could be a proper next step. Two other resources I might recommend would be going on Facebook to That Sex Group. I've mentioned it a number of times on this podcast with Brian and I. It used to be called the Kaleidoscope. That Sex Group is a Facebook group run by our dear friend Alexa Martinez, where it's a sex positive group where so many people go for issues around this kind of stuff. There are plenty of coaches that are in there as well. And it's a great forum to even just listen, even if you don't feel comfortable posting, it could be a place to just listen and see who identifies himself as a coach. And maybe you can, direct message someone privately. And the other book I would recommend is The Erotic Mind by Dr. Jack Morin. Probably the best book I've read on sex and sexuality. The Erotic Mind by Dr. Jack Morin. I think he had like 30 years of sex therapy work before writing this book. Talks about, how so many of our sexual fantasies and things that we might label deviances have resulted from periods of time in our life where we were missing the kind of love that we wanted. How so many of our fantasies generate from things that we're not supposed to have, right? Like things that are forbidden create so much excitement in our lives, and how that can be a playful and amazing part of our sex life, but it can also be something that deteriorates and destroys our sex lives. There's a lot of wisdom and forgiveness in that book that I found, and The Erotic Mind is something that may be useful for you as well. So I'd like to address the men who are listening here. I hope you had a chance to hear the struggle that one particular woman has gone through with respect to secret sexual behaviors in her partner's life. And I hope that through listening to this episode, you've heard the pain and anguish that's not just represented by Sammy, but many other women about some of these secretive behaviors. And fellas, I know how hard this is, right, to bring above board, to talk about, because I know that many women are not ready to hear this conversation either. I've even witnessed, and I was actually in a hotel room in Philadelphia like 15 years ago, walking down the hallway to my hotel room, where I had a chance to overhear a woman who had discovered her man's secret porn stash on his laptop. She was eviscerating him, like just belittling this guy. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, and I'm not saying that she was right either. There's a lot of pain on both sides. But I know how hard and scary it is to have these kinds of conversations. But you're listening to this show, presumably, because you're here to live the great man inside of you. Great man does not have a secret life, right? The great man within you does not have a secret life. He has a public life, has a private life, right? Where there's honor and respect for the things he chooses intentionally to keep private. But there is no secret life because the great man doesn't carry shame. So I would encourage you to look at, where are some of the behaviors and habits that you have around your porn use right now that may be shameful for your own, just because maybe it's not something that you would want to continue, or because you're hiding something from a partner. And maybe it requires some courage to bring that above board. And don't just do it. And here's the last piece of guidance I will give you. What I do not want you doing is dumping some sort of problem on your partner, or throwing up something all over her, like a confession of some kind, because it's easier to hot potato that shit out of your system, and now she's got to go deal with it. That's not what this is about, right? You need to do some deep work and some thought around, what is this thing that's standing in the way of a deeper relationship? How can I use this to maybe deal with some pain, some difficult conversations that's in service of us both going deeper? and then to present it to her or to him in your partnership. That will allow you to take it to that place. So I wish you luck. Sammy, thank you for the service that you provided to our group here. And Rick, brother, whether you ever listen to this or not, man, I'm out here rooting for you. Hey, if this particular episode kicked up something for you and you want to have a deeper discussion in our men's only Facebook group, head over to the Great Man Within podcast and post something. Ask a question. Tag me in it if you think that I can help you, or poll the men in the group. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to get out from behind the shadows and dealing with these conversations and questions you may have, behaviors that you may want to change around porn, and to talk to other men who are doing inner work who can help you, support you, to illuminate with their own experiences. Some great conversations are being had at the Great Man Within Facebook group. So go search it or click it in the show notes, and we'll see you over there.